Hello, my name is Pam, and I am originally from Beckley, West Virginia, and presently I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. When I was 5 years old, my home was destroyed by an electrical fire. At that time, there were no burn centers. This accident happened in 1959, and I was taken to a local hospital in southern West Virginia, to a hospital known as one of the miners' hospitals. They were called such because they were actually built by coal mining money in the Appalachian region. And I was taken to the Beckley Appalachian Regional Hospital, and I was hospitalized there from April until July of 1959. I was 5 years old when this accident occurred, and at the time they classified my burns as third degree over 65% of my body. We lived in a two-story wood house, and my bed was at the top of the L-shaped staircase, and there was a light bulb that hung over the stairway, and they believed that the fire started as an electrical shortage or something in that light bulb, because when my grandmother, who was out on this porch swing, heard me scream, she came into the home and she said that the stairwell was blazing at that time. And she could not get up the stairs. And she came around to the second floor of the house, which was located on a pathway. And someone had stopped along the highway. It was actually a high school student. And he came into the second story entrance and got me out of the fire. I remember the fellow who got me out of the house took his jacket and wrapped it around me and started patting the jacket to quench the flames that were burning. I remember arriving at the hospital. I remember the cold scissors cutting my clothes off. And then the last thing I remember from the initial event was asking for a drink of water. And they gave me a drink. And of course I asked for more, and they told me I couldn't have anything else to drink. And that's the last I remember of being in the emergency department. I particularly remember the dressing changes. My doctor was very gracious. At the time, like I said, I was in a local hospital and there were no burn centers. And so he took me actually to the operating room every day to change my dressings. But when it got to the point that he did not do that any longer, then they would put me into a tub of water and soak the dressings off. But still, there were times that I remember where things were stuck, and that was not pleasant. At the time, there were not a lot of preventative things done, so I did not have the Job stockings or any of the preventative measures that they have today for preventing severe scarring. And my arms were actually contracted. My hands were severely contracted. At one point, the physician had asked my mother for permission to amputate my hands, and she refused, thankfully. I have good function of my hands today. The hardest thing about being there as a child, as I remember, was just being separated from, my brother, my grandmother, my dog. I really missed my dog a lot. And one day, my dad snuck my dog in to see me. And of course, that was like taboo, especially if you have open wounds and burns. But I think it was very good for me to be able to see my dog. When it came a time for me to go home, I remember, especially I remember my grandmother's reaction upon seeing me. And I think she was very sad at how I looked, but she was very glad that I was home. I do remember mostly how people stared at me after that. In the hospital, I don't remember people staring at me. But afterwards, when I would go places with my mother, I remember people staring at me a lot. Of course, at that time, I was a very bright pink color. I remember I carried an umbrella with me everywhere I went. And but my mother was very good about making me believe that there was nothing wrong with me. And I remember one point we were shopping, and this man was staring at me, and he wouldn't quit staring at me. And I remember thinking, you know, didn't that man's mommy teach him not to stare at people, that it's not nice? But I never thought, what's wrong with me? Why is he staring at me? In November of that same year, I went into the Shriners Hospital, and my very first stint at the Shriners Hospital was 9 months. And it was a very long time, and they did some extensive work with making my hands functional and doing some grafting of my face. I don't ever remember thinking of myself as a survivor, because my mother taught me that there was nothing wrong with me, that I was not any different from any other child. And so to say that I ever felt like a survivor, that would be something that's foreign to me. I never thought of myself as a survivor. I just thought of myself as a normal person. You know, my family and friends have always been very supportive of me, and it's always amazed me that people say to me, I don't really notice your scars anymore. And I find that truly amazing, because of course that's all that I see when I look at myself. I don't see them not being there. So for people to say that is very sweet to me. Because of my hands, they said that my hands were crippled, and so rehabilitation was going to pay for me to go to school because of my crippled hands. And I tried to convince them that I could do things that, you know, I played the piano, I could type, I could knit and crochet and do all these things, but they insisted that I had crippled hands. So they were paying for my way to school. And so I had to go back to this committee at, you know, the rehabilitation to tell them what they had said to me. And of course, the surgeon that was on this committee was livid and threatened to call Senator Robert Byrd, and I said, oh no, oh no. And so I did not go to that college, and that was the first time in my life that anybody had ever said anything ugly to me like that. And I was very thankful that day that my mother was not there because I think there would have been a brawl. So I was thankful that she wasn't there, but that was a very difficult thing for me to endure. But, you know, it directed my life a different way. And I'm sure that if it happened today, it would be handled quite differently. But at that time, I chose not to attend that college. I have worked as a nurse since 1981. And some people find that truly strange, that I spent probably half of my life in the hospital, and I am now a nurse. But that is what I always dreamed of doing and being. And I love what I do, and I have done many things as a nurse. And that's what's great about the role of nursing. I started out on a med-surg unit. I worked in the operating room. I worked in the intensive care unit. I worked in neurotrauma, and I worked in cardiothoracic intensive care. I worked in the emergency department. I worked on the helicopter as a flight nurse. Presently, I'm working in an outpatient surgical center, which is wonderful. Folks come to us and have a procedure and generally go home the next day. One of the things that I always believed, just because I was burned and because you know, our culture is so much focused on the external, was that I just believed that I would never get married. People would ask me, I have patients who would ask me, you know, if I was married, and I would say, no, I'm not married, and they'd say, well, honey, I just can't believe that. Are you sure you're not married? I go, I know I'm not married. So that's kind of one of the things that I had just settled in my heart that would never happen, that, you know, I would never get married because, you know, people look on the external and that's what's important to them, and, you know, that's okay, and that's just the way it is in life. And I am happy to report that on September the 22nd, I will have been married for 2 years. The message that I would like to give for people who are burned today is something that is easy to say but hard to live. And that is that, you know, your being is not what you see. It is who you are inside. And this is probably the hardest thing to actualize in your life, because in this American culture, everything revolves around your appearance. It's how you look. And you know, that is such a small percentage of who you are. Who you are comes from your heart and your mind. It doesn't come from how you look.